Hi everyone, hello traders, Adam here. It is Sunday, it's 31st of October, it's Halloween 2021. So I'm just going to have a look at the week ahead, kind of outlining the high impact news this coming week. Well, again, I think that the eye is still going to be, the market is going to be sensitive to interest rate changes or any kind of inflation related topics, or any news or potential changes to those. And specifically, I think this week we've got non-farm payroll as well coming out. And it isn't necessarily what the numbers mean per se, it's just the market is going to have an increased volatility around these periods. We'll have quite a bit on Wednesday. So basically, starting and looking at US news, there'll be quite a bit of that. So I think this week there's going to be some increased volatility. When we have a look at the charts in a moment, we can see that there's been some new key levels broken. So a lot of currencies are now potentially going to start running. That's a possibility. It's going to be an interesting week. Let's go to the charts and have a look and see what's going on there. Start off looking at the VIX in terms of volatility. It's still relatively low, so although some of the markets have been moving, just look at that red monthly candle for October. It's going to be interesting to see. We're going to be stuck down at these lows, no doubt, but a potential kind of indecision candle so far on the weekly just could be a potential turning point in seeing the market start to head up towards 20, which could see some nice moves occurring. There'll be some moves anyway, but the question is, will they be nice and sustained? So we could be living in interesting times starting soon. Moving on to the dollar index. Dollar index had quite a bit of a knockdown on Thursday. Friday, nice strong bullish move up. It's not an engulfing candle, but it did move up and close above, several, at least 2 weeks worth of moves to the downside. That weekly candle looking nice and bullish, didn't close as high as I would have liked it to, so there is still some resistance at 94.50, and so I want to see how it's going to react, but I think it's going to attempt to test that level here. Overall, it's still producing sort of higher highs and still looking bullish on that monthly. So for now, I'm still expecting it to keep attempting to push up towards that 95 level, 94.50 level, and certainly ultimately 95 level. So looking here at the euro has been inherently actually quite weak of late, especially the euro crosses. We've broken outside of this range here, coming down to 1.16. I want to see if we get a bit of a bounce off that. There isn't really a clear trend at this point. You can see we had a downtrend here, then an uptrend, then that broke. So we're still ranging at this point in time. I want to see how this level holds at 1.1530, but it looks more bearish than bullish, supporting that idea of a stronger US dollar, weaker euro. And look at the euro crosses, they're all looking quite weak as well. Here we've got a downtrend now on cable. We've also got lower highs, lower lows on the weekly. And what we do have, though, is a test of support at 1.35 within a larger uptrend. So this is an interesting thing. Are we going to head back down towards testing this level, or they potentially turn around and start to climb? So again, a little bit cautious around that, but I'm thinking at least initially perhaps a move down to test 1.36 and then possibly a bounce off that. Looking at Aussie dollar against the US dollar here, they're still running into a little bit of exhaustion up here, but still looking more bullish than bearish. Certainly on the weekly, I think I like the look of that. I want to see if we can close a little bit higher. So this is quite interesting. We're seeing a bit of a mixture between the different majors, some of them supporting a stronger US dollar and some actually supporting a weaker US dollar. Looking here, for example, at QE dollar US dollar, definitely encountering some resistance there at 0.72. That weekly, though, producing a higher low. I could argue this is also range bound, but also that monthly candle looking really nice and bullish. So there's a bit of a battle, no doubt, and that could add some increased volatility. So there'll be some caution, but I want to see if that means ultimately we're going to see both the Aussie and Kiwi pairs push higher, but that doesn't mean that on the other majors we won't see those head a little bit lower. Dollar yen here also is very keen to attempt to go higher. You can see it's found some good strong support here on that 113.50 level. Had a bit of a move up, not a nice, I would have really have liked, it would have been very convenient, of course, for price to come back and retest this level and then continue on. That monthly looks really good, but you can see it's now running into historical resistance in this area. So that's to deal with that 114 level. So initially, I'd like to see if we can push up and test that level. Dollar Swissy, all right, this one actually in a downtrend on the daily, ping-ponging between a lot of daily levels here and a weekly resistance level there as well. And it's also producing sort of higher lows on the monthly there. So it's got some mixed signals here. I'm going to be looking to see if we do continue a little bit lower. There's not a lot of clarity that's coming from the majors. They all kind of got their own thing going on. It's quite interesting there. Dollar CAD. Dollar CAD, what I was looking for here is a decent retracement back up into 1.2450, as well as perhaps up to 1.25 into this area, looking for a potential swing trade to the downside. So I am anticipating this week to see it climb and head a little bit higher. Then I'll be looking for some possible bearish price action, see if it's going to continue lower. That monthly just looking nice and bearish. You can see some strong rejections there, but the weekly also looking like it wants to just head up a little bit before. Just a bit of a swing low there, and then see if it wants to head up, find some resistance, and possibly continue down. Okay, moving on to the currency crosses or pairs of interest to me. EURUSD, just a solid move to the downside. So what I'm going to be looking for are any kind of pullbacks on the lower time frames and looking for price for shorting opportunities back down towards these levels, back down towards these all-time lows. As a general rule, the SNB, the Swiss National Bank, they really don't like the Swiss franc to get too strong, so there is some risk inherent in this. I'll also be paying attention to any announcements coming out of the SNB across the wires, across the web, anything that just where they mention that they're getting a little bit uncomfortable with this, because that also does add volatility and it does add a little bit of danger. Most of the big moves that we've ever seen in the markets that have done real damage can be placed squarely on the shoulders of the SNB. Euro Kiwi also looking nice and bearish. This is a nice bearish engulfing candle. All right, so some exhaustion over here, meaning it's finding some support, but at the same time, it ultimately had a big push down. And what I like here is that monthly, that push and that close, currently that close below that level. So that looks particularly bearish in terms of the euro crosses, and so continuations to the downside could be of interest. And then Kiwi CAD here actually looking as though it wants to just break free and continue up past this 0.89 level up to 0.9. So Kiwi CAD, for me, I beg your pardon, looking nice and bullish, and I want to see if there's some good opportunities to get that up towards the top at 0.9. So smaller list so far, at least at the start of this week. All right, moving on to precious metals, starting off with gold. So gold is slowly but surely climbing its way up to the top. It has to get free of this 1.8 level before I think that it's going to start to move a little bit more freely up towards 1.840. That weekly candle is a bit of an indecision bearish candle inside bearish indecision candle, so actually not a lot of strength indicated there. The monthly offering, no clues really in terms of that. So we've just got a battle. We've got buyers below these levels and not enough above these levels to pull it up and up to these levels. I want to see if that happens. But and so that just means with caution, what I'm going to be looking for is I become bullish as we start to get back up above 1.8 or 1800, and then I'm bearish if we start to break below these levels down here. So otherwise, just trading with extreme caution. Silver, on the other hand, is looking that little bit more bullish on the daily, but if you look at it on the weekly, we've still got sort of an equal high here and a bit of a bearish indecision candle here as well, and a bullish monthly candle here within this larger range. So actually, look at the monthly in isolation here. Silver is indicating a possibility that it's going to attempt to climb a little bit higher, maybe go up towards $26. And so again, I think in this particular case, I'm more bullish if we can break above this these previous highs or these recent highs at 24.81. And see if that's going to be the case. Alternatively, I'd have to see if we break below these levels here to become more bearish. So leaning that little bit more bullish on silver than I am on gold. Looking at West Texas Intermediate oil here, that looks really nice. Nice little bullish pullback. Wants to take another run at 85.83 at that level of resistance, that next key major level there. The weekly chart not really giving much away. It has started to pause. Okay, so we're not closing a lot higher, and so this is definitely saying, look, I'm running out of steam, and that just could mean that it's going to take a bit of a breather at this level, possibly take a bit of a move to the downside. Overall, that monthly having had a really nice decent correction in August and pushing all the way up to these levels. I want to see how it deals with this. This is clearly a significant level here, and I want to see how it handles that. There might just be a period here where it takes a bit of a move down before continuing to the upside. We had a small correction here, but we've rebounded and we look pretty nice and bullish at this point in time. So my initial expectation is this is going to attempt to push a little bit higher. We'll see if we can get all the way back up here, but this level is also quite significant. So it just means if I am going to trade to the upside, I'm going to take some profits and be quite cautious with that. Looking now at Brent crude, also looking bullish, but not as bullish, not as strong. And you can see it's kind of really slowed down here. This kind of price action behavior looks more like it wants to have a bit of a correction. A retracement down towards 80 would be perfectly acceptable, but even down towards 78 would also be really acceptable, I think, in terms of perhaps overlay some Fibonacci retracement levels there and see if it pulls back to the 382. That monthly now looking like it's had a really good move. We're entering that area where I think another correction makes a lot more sense to me. So I'm going to just prepare for that, see if any breaks below the lows of Thursday's candle below these lows here around about that 81, let's call it 81.60 level. See if we do hit a little bit low, but it also looks like it wants to attempt to go high. It's at a major level. It just may not have the juice to be able to carry on from here. But West Texas looking, you know, a little bit more bullish, looking quite decent. All right, moving on to the global indices. I have a look here at the Dow. So this week I was looking for a little bit of a correction, a bit of a recovery, a bounce right back up at these levels. Overall, look at that coming in, testing these old highs here, really just tapping in and then carrying on. The weekly looks nice. It's a smaller candle here, not looking as that, you know, the trend is still tapering off a little bit. But again, that monthly candle looking really, really nice and bullish. It's a solid close so far above the highs. This is a particularly bullish sign. So this is what I want to see is can we, but I think also with the fact that we haven't had a bigger correction on the higher time frames, I do think we're going to encounter these sort of where you get a move up and then it struggles a bit and then manages to break a little bit higher, then struggles a bit and then pushes a little bit higher. But yeah, any kind of moves here where we start to break these lows, then I'm going to look for a bigger correction. But right now in isolation, that weekly looks nice and strong. And the monthly looks nice and strong. Let's have a look at the S&P. Also, looks really, really strong. I mean, it's just the smallest, most minute pullback, almost not even qualifying as a proper retracement. Just a sort of a single seller's candle, bit of a rejection candle here, and then a push all the way up, and that solid weekly candle closing right near the high. Also, a bullish, particularly bullish candle. This is insanely bullish collectively. All of these are, overall, the price action here is just remarkably bullish. And there are times in the past, certainly in the last couple of years, when at its most bullish, that's when it's decided the following week to do a bit of a correction. So I always just keep that in mind. But this looks really good. There's no signs of weakness here at all. And therefore, I think this week I'll be looking for pullbacks on the lower time frames and trading this to the upside. If there is a significant drop below these major levels out of nowhere, then obviously, then yes, there's going to be a bit of a pullback. But there's just no signs of weakness anywhere here at all. And so at this point in time, I'm going to be cautiously bullish. I'm not saying that we're never going to have a deep correction, but there just aren't any signs of weakness in the price action. No screaming signs of weakness there. There's no real bearish divergence. The price action is closing near the highs, really solid green buyer candles. The weekly looks nice and intact. The monthly looks ridiculously bullish. And you know, they're all, it's just looking crazy bullish. So there we go. So I'm just leaning that a little bit more towards that. I want to see if we do get that, if we do get a correction, then so be it. Right, let's have a look at the mini Russell. So I think what's worth noting here is that it's taken 1, 2, 3, so that's like 7 candles here just to get back up to this level where previously was 1 or 2. So that's just not a sign of super strength. It certainly isn't, but it can also be seen as a consolidation. So the market is getting ready to break out, and it's actually just resting while it works its way up there. It's not expending a lot of energy to take us there. That looks like a relatively decent candle. So there could be a breakout, possibly this week or this coming week out of the mini Russell. That'd be very interesting to me. Just looking at these higher lows, just closing a lot higher here, and if it does break out, I think it's going to just charge towards 2,500. That's interesting to me. So I'm going to look. We'll see when it happens, but I'm going to send an alert to see what happens if that breaks through on that. So maybe it'll be non-farm payroll. Maybe we'll be through by the time non-farm payroll comes around. I know there's talk of tapering, and that's usually going to be the kind of thing that dampens the spirits of the markets, but yeah, just it's, you know, it might be something that we'll have to see how the market deals with it in real time. But right now, as of this Friday, this most recent Friday, the weekend we're in now, the market closed very optimistically is the best way to describe it. Look at the FTSE in the UK, even look at that. It's broken through 7,200, come back, produced a bit of a bullish pin candle there. It's also sort of breaking, closing a little bit above the highs of this recent move. That's a nice monthly bullish candle. Again, I know we're right at these highs. I get all of that, but these are not signs necessarily of weakness. Even here, we had a bit of an inside indecision candle. The next candle pushed higher and actually almost might even have closed near or above the high there, which is not a sign of weakness. It's just not what weak markets do. Here you can see, look at the DAX, bullish candle off the moving averages, which is enough of a minor correction that justifies a continuing on. We've got, you know, same thing here, very similar to the FTSE. We've got a weekly, bit of an indecision weekly candle followed by another little bit of a spinning top type candle that has closed a little bit higher. We've got this pullback and a bullish finish, remarkably bullish signals here in the markets. Look at this coming into these highs here. Pull back and then close up near the highs. That looks really nice and healthy so far, and this looks particularly healthy. And this is the stocks, Euro stocks. Let's look at the Nikkei out of Japan. Okay, not a lot of clarity on this one. Not bearish per se. Pushing a little bit buyers, and not the best one out of the bunch so far, but also not looking particularly weak. And then let's have a look at the ASX in Australia. Okay, so this is interesting now. We've got a lower high in the weekly. We've got a move lower there. We've got a bit of an indecision candle sitting off the 7,200 level here, and a big close, a drop to the downside on Friday. Excuse me. Oh, lazy Sunday afternoon. That's what happens. And so we've got this drop down. That is interesting to me. Now, I'm going to be curious to see if this manages to recover off these highs almost immediately, and to see if we close up near these highs next week. This could be or should be potentially a significant level, which is either 7,000 or 7,200 if it does decide to come back down to that historic round number, or if it's happy just off the highs here. I want to see what happens with that. If, on the other hand, we just continue all the way down to these lows, yeah, that's going to be interesting as well. All right, so that being said, let's move on to the stocks of interest. Equities of interest. Okay, so Royal Mail has had a deep enough correction, in my opinion. Nice round number here, nice little small bearish candle, indecision candle, and therefore this is potentially a turning point. I'm going to just keep an eye on that, so that could be of interest. American Express, failures all along the top here. This is still bullish, which means there's still plenty of buyers, which implies that the next month in October is going to attempt to keep going higher rather than fail. So it might even be a slightly larger candle, but it is certainly going to attempt to go higher and might fail again. This is not complete exhaustion. Okay, there's a difference, some of them. I mean, we can see here there's a breakout and a complete failure. So in isolation, the weekly here doesn't look strong. But looking at that close on that monthly candle doesn't actually look that weak. It's just pulled it back down below this level. And so this area of resistance, let's call it 180, is a definite, it's a problem for it to deal with. I think it's this looks quite weak, but most of this and this looks like it wants to signal it's going to take another run at the highs and try and get back over that level of resistance. That'll be interesting. Okay, ARC Innovation managing to push a little bit higher. That monthly candle is looking okay. There is some resistance at 120, so we've got to get past that where it is right now. See if we can get back over that 130 level this coming week. Berkshire Hathaway struggling, no doubt, with some of its resistance at that 292 level. That monthly candle looks nice and strong and healthy. It's working its way towards the moving averages. It is range bound. But again, this might be leading towards ultimately a breakout at some point. I'd be interested to see if we break the low of this and come back down. We are range bound and therefore can come back down. On the other hand, if it does decide to immediately break up above those highs instead of obeying or staying within their range, then that is also quite a bullish sign that supported that. BP, all right, there's a nice little swing high here. This implying it wants to just come back down and tap these highs here at 28. We'll see if it does that. Looks nice and bullish on the monthly. It's coming into these old lows here, excuse me. And so we'll see if it struggles with that. But currently, or at least this week, I'm expecting possibly just a quick move down and possibly a rebound. We'll see. Coca-Cola. Very nice bullish recovery, and actually taking everything into account, this could be leading up. Potentially, it's too soon to tell, but it could be leading up to a breakout to the upside. So that's interesting. If it can get through this, but we'll have to see. Ultimately, also looking more bullish than bearish, and therefore I'm going to see if this is going to succeed in getting another run up to this 57 level and how it's going to do. ExxonMobil, same thing. Look at that, breaking above and closing above these old highs here. Bit of a stall there. So I don't know how much further it's going to go at this point, but it is not looking terrible on the monthly. And so we might just see it manage to recover off these highs and push a little bit. We've got a swing low there on the daily. Maybe it's going to manage to try to stay above that level. General Motors. On the weekly, it has come back down to test this 53 level. There's a bit of a failure there. That's interesting to me. Okay, so taking these two into account, this is what I'll be looking for this week. Do we fall back to this level, down towards the 48 level, back below 50, which would then start a bit of a swing high and then a bigger correction down towards 40? Or do we manage to stay above this level and actually push it back higher, which means we start to head back up to that 60 level? So this one has actually got two potential options there where I would say it's 50-50, whichever way it could go. We'll have to see. And again, yeah, looking at JP Morgan Chase, this is continuing to push a little bit higher, the weekly as well, continuing to do that. Look, we've even come back and tested these highs. We've come back into that. You can just see, though, here's a bit of a concern. This high, then deeper correction, and then a slightly higher high, and then already another bit of a correction. We've got a bit of bearish divergence on between those two different highs there. So this implying a bit of exhaustion might stall somewhat here. So any kind of significant out of the blue drops would, you know, where we have spikes on these, on especially across some of the other ones I've looked at, would then be a market-wide reaction. And so it's interesting with all the big news we've got coming this week. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the market responds to that. All right, so Morgan Stanley here, creeping a little bit higher. That monthly looks okay, but at some point we do need a deeper correction here. Down towards 80 would be fantastic. We do need a bit of a deeper correction here. You can see it is just closing, slowly closing to the upside. And again, it's still within the larger range. So I'd be interested to see if it can this week break these highs, push up to the top of the range again. Apple. Okay, so Apple has managed to recover a little bit. Bit of an indecision candle here. There's obviously some resistance that it's dealing with at 150, but this breakouts retested a bullish candle off that side. Looks pretty good. Not looking terrible. I just noticed obviously we had a move up, then we gapped down and then pushed back up. So I want to see if we can get past above this 150 this week. NVIDIA core. Wow, look at that solid breakouts. Really just a ridiculously, you know, gap up and a big move up, and it stalled and carried on. Also particularly bullish. At some point, yes, I would expect a correction, possibly maybe close the gap, maybe not. Maybe just come back down to these old lows here, test and find support and carry on from there, looking particularly bullish. But look at that. That's just insane. It didn't even correct to the moving averages, and it's done a big move here. But that might be most of the move, and then it starts to stall around the highs here. But that is, yeah, again, you know, if you're wondering where that bullishness is coming from. And then you look at PayPal, and PayPal, on the other hand, is doing, in my view, a very nice, healthy, well-deserved kind of correction. I wanted to see if it was stuck within this range, if it's going to stay within that range. So is this going to find a bottom now and then work its way back up to the top? So that, for me, this coming week is going to be really interesting. Last week, I was looking at that too. All we did was gap up a bit and come back down and test these lows. So really, this week is about, will this level hold? Will it? And if it closes up nice, really above, sort of above the midpoint of this last week, at the end of this coming week, we manage to get back up above this level, then I would say that's a fairly strong indication it's going to work its way back up to the top. Conversely, if it just falls right through this level, then that is very interesting, because if PayPal takes a hit while everything else is climbing, it implies that, yeah, there could be some bearishness elsewhere in the market as well. Look at this. Obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard about Tesla becoming $1 trillion company. So this is absolutely insane, of course. Yeah, just a burst to the upside. But this, look, what I would like you to take a look at here, the size of this candle, and big candles, by the way, always have big volume. Actually, I mean, I say that on flash crashes, a big drop could constitute a lack of volume. But as a general rule, big candles have big volume. So there's a lot of enthusiasm here. But usually after a big move like this, it would slow down a bit. But I think it's most likely at that point, it's probably got its eye on, say, 1, 2. So that's going to be interesting to me if we immediately come back this week back down towards these levels. But again, overall, these are not signs of a weak market. Are they signs of a behavior of a market in a bubble? Of course it is. Of course we're in a bubble. But are we in the bubble for another year, another 2 years? We're just going to have to see how that goes. Certainly not a good idea to become bearish on the market just yet. There's just no signs of stalling at this point in time. Doesn't make sense to do it. Looking at Spider, this one just coming back down into these old highs. This is a good place for it to find a footing and recover, but it's not looking strong. It's just hovering around these lows here. I need to see it push high, get back over 130, back up to the top of this range. It's just hovering around these levels. And so to me, I become more bullish on this once it gets back up above these old highs. And of course, bearish on it if we just start to break below these lows, it'll come back down towards 118, finishing off with Vanguard. So Vanguard overall looking particularly good. That weekly chart, very nice. Small, medium-sized candle, I would say, decent-sized candle closing near the top. That monthly candle closing right at the highs, particularly bullish. Weekly does the bare minimum, breaks above the high, pulls back, retests these old highs, and then carries on. All of this is particularly bullish. So, be very interesting to me. It's one of the, you know, there's not an infinite number of things the market can do, but one thing it could do is immediately produce equivalent size red candles that match all the green candles we see on the monthly. If we get that, you know, then all of those subsequently over November would imply a bigger correction to the downside. But most of the markets here are just looking just astonishingly strong and bullish. Interesting. All right, moving away from those onto the treasuries and looking at bonds. Again, no one's really buying at this point in time. They're holding near the lows. excuse me, but no one's buying with huge amounts of enthusiasm. Saw a bit of a move and a little bit of a bullish candle on the US 10-year T-notes. Look at this. We've broken to the downside of the range here with the Euro bubble, implying again no real interest or demand, certainly for the Treasuries there. And even here, we're starting to push near the lows. That's a particularly bearish candle as well. It would have been a clearer signal if it had closed near the lows, but not really doing much else other than that. You could see an attempt to climb here, some bullish divergence. So it's trying to find a base here. So it is going to attempt to bounce off this. We'll see if it succeeds, but if it breaks lower, if the rest of the markets are still bullish, I can't, and no signs of weakness, I can't reasonably really expect these to suddenly become very popular. Okay, moving on to cryptos. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's struggling about this band around 60,000. Looks like it's pretty happy to hover around this area for now. That weekly produced an attempt and a fail. And then we produced a swing high. We've got an indecision candle. So what does this really tell me? There's lots of buyers below this level. There's just not enough above this just yet. That monthly candle looking okay. So for now, I just see this level as a real challenge. Meaning that this week the market could come back down towards these old highs. That's a possibility, of course it is. At the same time, it could break above those. So I'm not really interested at this point. It's in a really dangerous area to be actively trading it. I'm going to be potentially interested in some temporary shorts if I was going to do that from these levels. If we start to break these lows down towards these old highs, conversely, then I'd be looking at potential longs above this kind of band over here. We've got to get above that sort of 64,000, starting to become a bit more bullish on it. Ethereum also starting to slow down a little bit, but still looks relatively nice and healthy. That is a nice, healthy, bullish candle. I mean, at some point, you just do want a nice, normal correction. Excuse me. And that weekly has continued its trend to the upside. So far, looking okay. So to me, this is just sort of hinting at creeping slowly to the upside. We'll see how that goes. Neo. Neo not really going anywhere. It's almost as though it's just not that popular at the moment. It's got a nice little bit of the beginnings of green shoots here on the monthly, which could lead into a breakout, but it's got a tough, you can see it's really struggling with around about the $52 level. Excuse me, that 52 level there. And so therefore that is a potential issue there. We'll have to see how that goes. Cardano pushing. This is actually looking now particularly bearish. Actually, this one is now looking like it wants to continue to come back down into the moving averages. Interesting. So as we sort of head away from Bitcoin, with the exception of, say, Ethereum, it's starting to look a little bit more bearish. Looking at Ripple, just look at that constant failure here. Just rejection, rejection, rejection. There's just no buyers. Nobody is buying at this point in time. And we can see it the same on the weekly. It's coming back down. So no one's really, the buyers are all here. No one's really selling at this point below this level, but no one's buying above that point. So just no one's getting the love. Maybe people are taking some money out and spending it for Christmas presents. Who knows? Shopping. Again, you can see it here. We finish off with Dogecoin. That rejection, 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 just failure, lack of interest above those levels at this point in time. This is not a particularly strong signal as well. So, for me this week, my expectation is Ethereum is possibly going to try and claw its way slowly but surely, just keep trying to gain some ground there. But for the rest of them, I don't really have much expectations. If there's a move, it'll be a bit of a surprise. But the intention at this point is there's just very little interest in these markets. So for this week, I don't really have any real expectations out of the cryptos area at this point in time. They're battling with major levels. Buyers and sellers seem happy with where they are. There just isn't much demand for them. There we go. So, ladies and gents, listen, I hope you enjoyed this. Please get involved. Please give me some comments and feedback at the bottom if you want. And yes, otherwise, have a fantastic week. Trade carefully, trade responsibly. And yep, looking forward to let's see what the market does this week. Thank you.